So before we start the Gongchik, I just want to update some of you. Some of you, way back, I think, during Sakadawa, a little bit after Sakadawa this year, I said that I'm going to commission a Tanka painter to paint, to illustrate, so to say, the Avalokiteshvara practice that we were doing. The Avalokiteshvara that appears in the 6 realms according to the Namchu Dharma sadhana called the Bushukuwa. So some of you have participated by sending money for the to actualize this Tanka. So this is the update. You can see, right, in the share screen. I'm not very sure. Yes, no?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yes, good to have some confirmation, yes or no. So that is the Tanka in progress. A friend in Kathmandu found a very good Tanka painter, I think. And so I've been, and the Tanka painter almost like every step sends us questions and updates on how I want things. And so far it has been very nice to work with this Tanka painter. So when this Tanka is completed, as per the original plan, when this Tanka is completed, of course, we will take a very good quality image of that. Then the completed Tanka will be sent as a gift to Tibet House in Mexico City, because I did a program, offering a program on this particular practice there that weekend, one weekend. And this will be a good thing for the center to have. And so, anyway, as I said thus far, I'm very pleased with what this Tanka painter has done. And at some point, maybe Leonard will share his own project as well. He has been very diligent in also working on the Tanka and checking in with me. So at some point, you can look at his progress that he has been working on for his own use, using a combination of computer technology and hand painting. He's been able to do a very nice version as well. And a friend of mine who's been using computer painting softwares and been doing other types of things that is also makes it, I think, doable, you know. So this is, I think, I'm sure if when Leonard wants to talk about it, it can be also a way of practicing deity yoga that is very hands-on. Of course, you know, for those of you who have kind of ability and actually enjoy, you know, drawing or coloring, this is a good activity. Then the imprints of the deity image becomes stronger and easier. When completed, this Tanka will be, it's a good size, not huge, but a kind of full size for the wall. It'll occupy a nice wall. And so the main, some of you folks in Singapore sent some contributions, and then the main part of the contributions came from actually members of Casa Tibet in Mexico. So now the last two statements of chapter 4. Statement 23, as I said, in the commentary, there's a lot of things in there that is to respond to complaints from those who disagree with Gyoba Rinpoche's statement. As I said, I don't know if we need to go through those complaints, the responses to the complaints. So let's see. People claim that one performs the dedication of the root of virtue only in as much as it was produced by oneself. But Gyoba Rinpoche says the root of the virtue of all samsara and nirvana is dedicated. So here it might seem a little bit like kind of, I think for many of us it might seem, this Vajra statement, it's a little obscure. What are they talking about here? So the view being countered is what people claim, which is that you only dedicate this thing here called the root of virtue. You only dedicate that insofar as to whatever degree you have developed this root. Yeah, so that's the general view. So this phrase, root of virtue, what is this root of virtue? Root means basis. And what is the basis of this virtue? In the Mahayana, we say Buddha nature. So the view being countered is that only to whatever degree you have developed this Buddha nature, then to that degree, the power and the merit and the virtue of that can be dedicated. Gyoba Rinpoche's statement is saying, actually, whether you have developed or not developed this root, the root itself can be dedicated. So let's see. So the commentary. The virtue of the three times of all sentient beings of samsara, and the virtue of the gathering of the two accumulations by all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and three times, namely of Nirvana, are combined by one's mind and dedicated for the benefit of others as the essential cause of awakening. So this is the meaning. This is the meaning of this statement, which is that the perfected virtue, so you can say Buddha nature fully realized, fully developed with realization and qualities as demonstrated or as actualized by the Buddhas of the 10 directions who have basically achieved nirvana. All those virtues. So technically, right, those virtues we say, well, they don't belong to me. Right? Because I'm not yet actualized. But Gyoba is saying, no. Even those that belong to others, like other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, those virtues that have been fully accomplished, and then our limited virtues, the virtue of the three times of sentient beings of samsara, it says all of those kind of combine them in your own mind, bring them all together in your own mind, and dedicate all of that for the benefit of others. And see that the virtues already accomplished by the Buddhas and the infinite virtues already accomplished by the Buddhas, the limited virtues that you and I are still working on accumulating, all of that can be dedicated to sentient beings, serving as the essential cause for the awakening of all beings. So this is a much vaster virtue, a much vaster view of the act of dedicating merit. Our conventional understanding of dedicating merit is just like, whatever we have done, I dedicate, Here, Kyopa is saying, no, you need to make it vaster. In a way, I feel what is going on here is he's saying, whenever you engage in any acts of virtue, and you recognize that, then you should dedicate that. But when you dedicate that, don't just think of your own virtue. Think of all the virtue of all beings in samsara, limited virtue, virtue that is often mixed up with also non-virtue, But think only of all the virtues of all beings. Then also think of all the virtues that have been accomplished by however number of Buddhas there are out there. All of that, bring them together in the single act of maybe you just feeding, a little ant, a morsel of sugar. In that moment of dedicating, don't just think, I dedicate the merit of this little speck of sugar that I'm giving this, ant. But in that moment, think of all the virtues, limited and unlimited, and dedicate that. And so it says, since one, the root of the thing to be dedicated is the creator of samsara and nirvana, namely the mind. Since two, the mind dwells in all of samsara and nirvana inseparably united with true reality. Since three, the cultivation of the mind, that is the resolve for awakening, relative bodhicitta, is the guardian of samsara and nirvana. And since four, the roots of virtue from the time of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas' first resolve until the end of the teachings are nothing else but the benefit of sentient beings, this is how one must dedicate. In other words, every act of dedication, if you want it to be really powerful, should contain these four understandings. That since the root of the thing to be dedicated is the mind itself. In the end, we are dedicating the mind, our mind, for the complete freedom and liberation of all beings. And then understanding that this mind, whether we realize it or we don't realize it, whether we are lost with regards to understanding the reality of this mind, or we actually recognize it, itself, it's already inseparably united with true reality. It's never separate from its, in other words, it's never separate from its true state. This is a basic Buddha nature teaching, saying that, when sentient beings wander in samsara, this nature has not become worse. When sentient beings become free from samsara and have become Buddhas, this nature has not improved. The nature itself doesn't become, Buddha nature itself doesn't become worse or better. Three, the cultivation of the mind on the side of relative bodhicitta is the guardian of samsara and nirvana, meaning, if you want true protection from samsara, and if you want to experience the true freedom of nirvana, They are all conferred by, they are all ensured by this mind. Specifically now, this mind is relative bodhicitta. Then finally, the roots of virtue from the time of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas first resolve until the end of the teachings. End of the teachings means like to the furthest end of realizing the teachings, the reality of things. It is nothing else but the benefit of sentient beings. For the benefit of sentient beings. Acts as a real benefit to sentient beings. So recognize that the fourth one mainly is about how that resolve, which in the third one is talking about our resolve, right, to become Buddhas. The fourth one is, you could say, to hook our resolve onto the completed result of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, those who have arrived. Kind of you kind of tag it onto that and say, likewise, it will move in the same direction. So when we dedicate in this with these four kind of understanding, then we can see that, when you dedicate merit, merit in this way of understanding, merit or virtue is no longer so territorial, no longer so. I used to say, my expression is like, when we dedicate merit, it's like we are putting whatever merit or virtue that we happen to have, accumulated into the Buddha's bank account. So in putting it into Buddha's bank account, there is no like individual account. It's just one bank account, one name, Buddha. So you put it in there. So this Buddha bank account is completely protected. Like in the US, we call it the FDIC, right? You don't need to fear that the bank will shut down and then you have lost all your money. No, this is like guaranteed you will not lose. But one perhaps downside to this account, based on our very egocentric, our habitual patterns of like, oh, what about me, right? Then the downside is there are no individual accounts. You cannot say, well, I put in $50. That other guy only put in 5 cents, How can we both withdraw the same amount? Not fair. No, in this merit account, you don't have that. So you just put it in there. But you put it in there so that whatever you need, whatever anybody needs, they are able to withdraw from it with no conditions whatsoever. So that your one drop, even if you put a drop in there, because of where you put it into, it's not just a drop. It's everything that is in the account is accessible to you. And likewise to anybody else. Even those who did not open an account with this bank, they have access. Another way of looking at this is, as I've said, all Buddhists, whenever, anywhere, anyone achieves Buddhahood, all the first bhumi, second bhumi, third bhumi, fourth bhumi, fifth bhumi, all of that, know that they are achieving that because you dedicated merit. The Vajrashikara says, as the Exalted One has performed the dedications before, one dedicates virtue arising from the yoga. Through the power of the resolve for awakening, even one's mind is to be dedicated. The mind itself is to be dedicated. The perfection of the great Vajra is caused. Through the resolve for awakening, one will liberate beings. The great essence of the Dharmadhatu is undefiled by sentient beings. The whole essence of the Sugata is undefiled by the mud of the afflictions. So this is enough, because from this point on, it's a settling score. Chodra defending this statement against Sakya Pandita's complaints. Oh, many pages here. Here, again, when you have time, when your second reading of Gongchik, maybe you want to look closely, because yes, it is about, responding to Sakya Pandita's complaints. But in responding, there is nonetheless an articulation of Drigong's understanding of the implications of saying that all beings have Buddha nature. So it's not just, okay, it's never just, like people arguing. Even, I don't want you to misunderstand me and say, it's just people arguing, No. Even when they're arguing, likewise, we say we need to develop pure vision. If we cannot develop pure vision towards individuals like Chodra, Sakya Pandita, right? Then it's going to be kind of hard to develop pure vision towards politicians arguing in DC now. And then you're like, what? I have to develop pure vision towards that? Yes, actually. As I talked about in the Dhammakirti Sangha, right? Like there's the vertical relationship. Then in the context of Vajrayana, then especially Guru and ourselves. Then there's the horizontal relationship. Then too often, we misapply the vertical relationship and even step on others horizontally to try to reach the Guru, to get closer to the Guru. Yeah? But the whole point of establishing this vertical relationship with the Guru, meaning hierarchical, me here, Guru, Buddha there, above my head, the point of even using or adopting this vertical view, vertical relationship, is so that we can raise all the horizontal and the lower above into the Buddha state, into the Guru state. So anyway, these debates, these kind of settling score, so to say, we can also view them as, basically Manjushri, because Manjushri, right, is the Buddha of wisdom. So we can see this as, Manjushri sharpening his sword. So both the sword and the stone that he uses to sharpen, they are all emanations of himself. So when Sakya Pandita is sharpening it against, seemingly complaining against Kyoba Rinpoche's statement, so Kyoba Rinpoche's statement becomes like the stone. What do you call that stone for sharpening knives? What do you call
Whetstone. Whetstone.
The whetstone? Yeah.
Whet.
Whet. Yeah. W-H-E-T. W-H-E-T. Yeah. So then in that case, you have to think, yes, the Gongchik statements are like the whetstone, and then, Sakya Pandita's statements are like the sword. Or maybe, no, his statement is the whetstone, and then the sword is Kyoba Rinpoche's statements. Then when Chodra responds, then Sakya Pandita's words is like the sword, and then the whetstone is going to sharpen it. Yeah? And then know that the whetstone and the sword, they are both Manjushri's tools. Then we don't need to get into these narrow sectarian arguments. Again, that is pure vision, being established. Then you say, oh, if I were to apply this, to like a samsaric context, It's really terrifying because we fear that when we apply this into samsaric context, right, then, wow, one side might say, well, are you saying that, these terrible things that these people do, I accept them, whatever you think these people, terrible things that they're doing, right? No, we're not saying that you accept that. But we are saying that, if you don't start off by viewing I'm right, you are wrong as the final determinant, if you don't do that, then there is the possibility of actually reaching understanding and perhaps reaching acceptance. If we start off by already, whether actively or not actively, I'm right, you're wrong, then there is no space to meet anyone because we have fully occupied that space and nobody can come in. Then we have rejected them, right? So anyway, so 423, yeah, even in Sobish's notes, it's like he doesn't talk about that. He like 391 at the end. In Chokidrakpa's commentary, there follows a debate with Sakya Pandita on the concept of dedication. A detailed discussion of this debate would be desirable, but exceeds the scope of this work. He even says, in some places, my translation must remain merely a preliminary attempt because it's so, you could say, like, so, like, mysterious, that it's hard to understand exactly what, Chudra is talking about or critiquing or alluding to. So he says it's beyond. But instead, if we look at his notes, I think this pertains to Kyopa's statement, regardless of other people's complaint. So that, I think, we should do our best to understand. So let's look at the notes for statement 23. And the commentaries offer 4 reasons why it is possible to dedicate virtue not accumulated by oneself. So this statement is basically, as Sobish here clarifies, it is in opposition, or rather, in contrast to those who feel that you can only dedicate what you yourself have amassed. Kyopa's statement is saying, no, not just you yourself, you can dedicate also whoever has collected, have created. Yeah? And so 4 reasons. 1, the root of the thing to be dedicated is the creator of samsara and nirvana, namely mind. Rinjan Changchup states that all the roots of the virtue of samsara and nirvana can therefore be dedicated because they are appearances of one's mind. One thus dedicates what appears and exists inside as one's manifold own mind itself, which is the root. And so that's one reason. Second reason, the mind is inseparably united with the single true reality, which also encompasses everything of samsara and nirvana. So this single true reality, which is the same for all beings from the perfect Buddha down to the beings in hell, can be dedicated as the single true reality of the one who dedicates, and it includes all. Yeah. Third, the cultivation of the resolve for awakening is the guardian of samsara and nirvana. This means that someone who has cultivated relative bodhicitta has taken care of all and everything and is thereby able to dedicate everything. The Rinjanma offers a beautiful illustration. When Devadatta at the banks, Devadatta, for those of you who don't know, is the Buddha's quote-unquote evil cousin, always causing trouble for the Buddha, always seeking to split the early community. So it's about him, okay? When Devadatta at the banks of the river Rohita shot an arrow at a wild goose, so this is when they were young, I think when they were teenagers. The goose was taken by a bodhisattva who took out the arrow and applied medicine to cure the wound. Thereupon Devadatta said, "Since I shot the arrow first, I was taking the goose before you." So meaning Devadatta said, the goose belongs to me. To which the bodhisattva replied, even prior to that, I first cultivated the resolve, I was taking care of all sentient beings. Thus, I took the goose before you. This is Siddhartha. Basically, after Devadatta shot the goose, Siddhartha found it first and was taking the arrow out and cleaning the wound and trying to save it. Devadatta comes up and says, "Hey, that goose belongs to me because I shot it." Siddhartha said, "Actually, I shot it long time ago when I made the resolve to liberate all beings. So this goose belongs to me." Buzz off. Rinchen Changchup, fourth, explains that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have gathered their accumulations of merit and gnosis not for their own sake, but for the benefit of sentient beings, since they must place all sentient beings in the goodness and bliss of samsara and nirvana. He compares this to the accumulation of wealth by a father. The father who has accumulated the wealth for the sake of his son, and the son is also expected to use it in the same way, he is to invest it wisely to preserve it for his son. And so for these four reasons, you can dedicate not just the little virtue, merit that you accumulate, that you have amassed. On each occasion of dedicating, you can dedicate any and all merit and virtue. To me, I have to look again and again at these four reasons because I don't think I fully kind of appreciate, the points being made there. But nonetheless, the statement itself to me is really helpful because it's saying to us, like, don't be so narrow in your understanding of merit and virtue. So often we are not capable of seeing how vast goodness is, because we take goodness for granted, So only when things are not going well, then we dwell on all the things that are not right and not well and not good and not satisfying. When in fact, goodness can also be just as vast, if not way vaster, which is what the teachings actually say. Goodness is the nature and essence of everything, but may be hard to accept or believe. But at least we can say, if we are not yet able to accept that goodness is the fundamental nature of everything, then at least we can say, between choosing to see goodness as vast or trouble as vast, what is more skillful? Yeah? So at the end of Dugong Dhammakirti, I was saying, choose carefully, because choices result in outcomes. So we can choose to spend our days and hours and minutes counting and accumulating and multiplying problems. Or we can choose, make the choice of counting and accumulating, multiplying goodness. If you try to, keep an accounting of life, a balance sheet for life, you can never balance the sheet. No way. You can never have a clean balance sheet for your P&L, profit and loss, for life. Because we don't have enough time to really do that. What we do have is the ability and also the choice of, do I want to look at P or do I want to look at L? Of course, don't run your business this way. For your business, yeah, there's a way to come up with, but for life, for the accounting of life, there is no possibility, If you try to account for all the things that are wrong in the world, there's no end to that. Likewise, if you want to account for all the things that are right in the world, there's also no end to that. Bottom line, no end to either. Then now, which no end should you occupy yourself with? Say you have 20 more years to live, 15 years more to live, 30 more years to live, 40 more years to live. Which one would be more fruitful? So this dedicating of merit to me is reminding us that even when you feel like, oh, I've created so little, don't forget that your little, when joined together with the reality of goodness, is not little at all. It's only little to the degree that your mind is narrow and tight. So in the end is dedicating the mind. In the end is practicing bodhicitta. Yeah. Next statement, 24. Actually, before we go to 24, I'm going to sip my coffee and see if you have something to say about 23.
I think that this might be like a commentary to the dedicated prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Where we start by the virtues collected in the
yes, of course. Mm-hmm. And the dedication prayer, by the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and others, in Samsara and Nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue. The innate root of virtue, that's the mind, and more specifically then, Buddha mind. Yeah, and all sentient beings, Yeah. So the 2 aspects, the innate one meaning whether we have done something to it or not, it's already a reality. So Buddha nature. Then that's the absolute level. Then the relative level would be all the accumulating that is going on, has gone on, will go on. That's the relative level. So both the absolute and relative level dedicated.
Yeah. There was this part that they say, because of that, may I realize. So it was a little, and now I understand it better, that it was because of them, I get it, not because we all have it.
Yes.
Okay. No, thank you.
Yeah.
I think it also gets to the issue of generosity, because it's sometimes hard to be grateful for what somebody else is doing versus what we're doing.
Oh, yes.
It's a good reminder that we need to not be so self-centered about our stuff and our goodness and our
Yes.
wonderful deeds and all that business, and think about
Yes.
others as really probably more important because it's a broader appreciation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This reminds me of the dedication section of the King of Noble Aspiration prayers, where you bring everything together and
Yes.
you know, whatever little thing you have done, you bring it all together with the merit of others and you dedicate it to the sublime, the Most High. It's a beautiful verse. I don't remember the exact wording, but this, you know, makes that. Now I see how those verses make sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now remember, you know, like these two Vajra statements are parked in the section called the training of the Bodhisattvas. Yeah. So dedication is part of this vast Bodhisattva activity. So now 24. Yeah? People claim that it is not necessary to perform dedications to the Buddhas and the excellent gurus. So, you know, again, on the surface, it makes sense. Like Buddhas and the perfect sublime gurus, right? Here, guru is not talking about, you know, like someone who teach you Dharma. Here, guru, like as in the embodiment of Buddha for you. Whoever you think embodies the Buddhas of past, present, and future. So in other words, you know, who you already consider to be beyond confusion and suffering. So makes sense. Like, you know, yeah, you don't need to dedicate merit to them. They are perfected. But interestingly, Kyoba Rinpoche says, it is also necessary to perform dedications for the Buddhas, to the Buddhas and gurus. He says, no, it's necessary. Because, I mean, again, you know, like normally we say, oh, I dedicate it to the enlightenment and the happiness of all beings. Then of course, you know, you're like, well, Buddhas are already there, you know, they don't need it, you know. But here, interestingly, Kyopa Rinpoche say, oh, no, you should dedicate to them as well. Again, you know, this is along the theme of like, let your dedication be vast. If 23 is about what you dedicate, 24 is about who you dedicate it to. In both respects, make it vast. Yeah, make it vast. And the discussion in 23, not only is the thing that you dedicate, make it vast, as in what virtues, right? What merit are you dedicating? But it already also, in that discussion there, it also points out that your mind, meaning then the one doing dedication, is also vast. So don't think of yourself as this limited self. That your mind has the same nature as the mind of all sentient beings, as the minds of all sentient beings, as well as the minds of all the Buddhas. And therefore, the definition of self should not be this narrow I. Right? Those are part of the 4 reasons why you dedicate in a vast way. Because this I is not as narrow as we habitually operate on. So the subject doing the dedication, understand that it's vast, unbounded. What is dedicated, therefore? So then all the little, seemingly discrete little merit or virtue that is accumulated, in fact, is also vast. 24 is saying, and who we dedicate it to, the goal that we hope this dedication will fulfill, should be so vast that even Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who, yes, technically don't need our, virtue anymore because they're perfected, but even those who are perfected, we should also not leave them out. Yeah. So the commentary. It is taught that dedication to the Buddhas and so forth is necessary, since thereby the activities are completed. So the emphasis here is, why do we dedicate to Buddhas and Gurus? So that the activities are completed. What activities? The Buddha's activities to benefit beings can be further enhanced. So this is the logical kind of like the reason why. So in that sense, yes, Buddhas don't need our merit insofar as their own situation. But even Buddhas could always do more, you could say, in terms of their ability to benefit others. So the Vinayavastu says, when having performed ascetic practices, the Buddha proceeded to dwell under the Bodhi tree. The girls Sujata and Nandabala fetched the milk of 1,000 cows that had been refined 16 times. Oh my gosh. This is like the essence of ghee. Yeah. 1,000 cows refined 16 times. Yum, yum. They dedicated the root of virtue, saying, may the ascetic practices of the Bodhisattvas be accomplished. Thus, it was dedicated for the completion of the Bodhisattva's activities. It is like when Devadatta fired a slingshot at the Buddha, and the wound stopped leaking through the power of uttering the truth. There was an occasion where the Buddha fired a slingshot at the Buddha. And then a splinter, not the main, this is like a huge boulder slingshot, not a small slingshot. In that story, there's further elaborations. It is said that Vajrapani, Buddha's like main protector, destroyed this big boulder with the Vajra, so that the boulder didn't crush the Buddha. And then splinters from this, smashing of the boulder, nonetheless, produce splinters, and then it cut the Buddha's toe. Something. But here it said that in the story, if I remember correctly, then the Buddha asked. I'm sure Sobish will provide us the exact story, but so my memory might be fuzzy about this. But it's basically Buddha asked one of his disciples and say, speak a truth, say something that is truthful, and then say, by the power of this truth, may the cut heal. And then it said it happened. So it's an example of even the Buddha, benefited from someone dedicating it to him. Moreover, by dedicating our root of virtue, so that it will not be exhausted, it will increase even more. The Buddha's former promise to cause the benefit of beings will be quickly completed. The bodhisattvas will increase their abandonment and realization, abandonment of afflictive emotions and realization. And the gurus will, even if they are ordinary beings, quickly complete the stages and paths. If they dwell on stages and paths, meaning the 10 bodhisattva bhumis, they will quickly traverse them, pass through them. Having all that in mind, Jigten Sungkwan repeated again and again, quote, "Even after I pass into Nirvana, you who remain behind must perform dedications." Such is the intended meaning. So Jigten Sungkwan says, that you have to perform dedications, but the implication here is perform dedications to me. And so this point, Chodra says, and if your gurus are still ordinary beings, then even more you should dedicate to them so that they can quickly achieve a state of Buddha. So furthermore, in the Sanjaya Gata, it says, if a capable bodhisattva who is skilled with regards to means, having rejoiced in the foundation of their merit, dedicates it completely towards supreme awakening for the sake of sentient beings, he will outshine the entire world with his dedication. If in this context of dedication, through explanation, authoritative citation, and reasoning, one would systematically establish, or in this context of dedication, one would systematically establish the perfection of the Lord Drikungpa's intention, such as the manner of the complete purity of the 3 spheres, the elaboration would expand. However, I think that due to the many words of the detailed explanation of the branches that issue from the interpretation of the basic meaning, this would be tiring, and that this book would be too small for that. Therefore, I leave it at that. Basically, he said, we can further elaborate on that, but this will be rather tiresome, so I'm not going to go there. So let's look at Rinjanma again. The earlier commentaries, they often illustrate more. Rinjanma explains the general position. People often say that since the Guru or the Buddha have already purified their defects and completed their qualities, it is not necessary to dedicate merit to such individuals. Then the Dorshema gives a very good explanation of why this is not the case, why even to those who have been perfected, we should dedicate to them. It is a superior joy if one dedicates to Buddhas and Gurus, since it speeds up the completion of their activities. As in, you will help them, so to say, to benefit more beings. Now, if one accomplishes all the causes and also dedicates the accomplishment to Buddhas and Gurus, all the results that are their special dharmas arise since the result arises in agreement with the cause. For instance, if still more is added to the wealth of a rich man, he will be even wealthier. Similarly, the Buddha's and Guru's activities will still grow when one performs dedication to those who effect the benefit of beings through activities, because faults are purified and qualities are completed. So in fact, for example, you should dedicate merit to Medicine Buddha, like right now. So that, Medicine Buddha's activities of healing beings that need to be healed can increase. You should dedicate merit to Jambala, the Lord of Wealth, the Lord of Abundance, so that Jambala's activities of abundance can be even more powerful at this time of great need. So imagine, like you're dedicating to Medicine Buddha, you're dedicating to Jambala, you're dedicating to Panashavari. This also has the effect of you not going, you know, oh, Jambala, Jambala, help me, help me. Oh, medicine Buddha, help me, help me. Yeah. It takes the focus away from these narrow concerns and say, I want to bank my merit in the Jambala bank, in the medicine Buddha bank, in the Tara bank, because it can benefit so many other people. It's basically sort of saying, like, you know, because right now, if we just dedicate it to our own, but our own ability is very narrow, you know. And sometimes I've said, like, you know, like to give $10 to me, or to someone in need, of course it's good. But that $10 could be used even more efficiently to create greater benefit. If we give it to something that we know will address like the bigger underlying issues that is causing that problem. So a few years back, I think when His Holiness was visiting, I said, you know, and now when we dedicate merit, you know, I said we should dedicate it to the fulfillment of His Holiness's aspirations, rather than fulfillment of our own aspirations, because our own aspirations are so narrow. Yeah. But if we know how to dedicate it to the fulfillment of Dalai Lama's aspirations, medicine Buddha's aspirations, then even though our fuel that we are giving there is limited, but because it's joined with such powerful, right, such a powerful tool, it can accomplish a lot more. And the Rinjanma says, by dedicating the thing, namely the root of virtue, to the perfection of the pure field, namely Guru and Buddha, one's accumulations are completed. Since apart from the Buddha, there are no completely pure fields of merit in the world, including the God realms, through the root of virtue of merely visualizing the Buddha and tossing a single flower into the sky, suffering will come to an end. Therefore, if one dedicates the root of virtue to the Buddha, it becomes measureless. Secondly, if the merit of offering to a single pore of the Guru who introduces one to the nature of mind is greater than making offerings to all Buddhas of the 3 times, then to offer one's root of virtue to the field of the Guru cannot be measured. Therefore, it is very appropriate to dedicate to the Guru and the Buddha. Rinchen Chanchup describes dedication of virtue here as a process of making an offering, where the virtue is the thing one offers, and the Gurus and the Buddhas are the fields to which one offers the thing. Doje Sherab describes the result of this process as a speeding up and increasing of the Buddha's activities, which is indirectly beneficial to everyone. Rinchen Chanchup points out that by making this offering, one's accumulations are directly benefited by becoming complete and immeasurable. The commentaries provide the example of the girls Sujata and Nandabala's offering of milk to the future Buddha, which they dedicated to the accomplishment of the future Buddha's practices. Thus, their offering and dedication marked the end of his activity of asceticism. This is Siddhartha, still as an ascetic. And he thereupon entered upon the middle path. And he thereupon achieved Buddhahood. The second example is that of Devadatta, who catapulted a rock at the Buddha, a splinter of which caused a leaking wound at the Buddha's foot. The wound stopped leaking like bleeding, through the power of uttering a truth. Namely, as Dorje Sherab states, when the following words were uttered by the monk Kashyapa. So the Buddha asked Kashyapa and say, speak a truth and dedicate that speaking of that truth to this healing. So Kashyapa say, may the wound stop leaking through the blessing of the truth of the sameness of son and foe in the heart of the Exalted One. So what is that story? So the story plays out in Rajagriha. This is in the Vinaya Vastu, the footnote. The rock was partly pulverized in flight by the Yaksha Vajapani and partly caught by another Yaksha called Kubera. Kubera is also Jambala. That's why we offer water to Jambala. The Yakshas and the Nani and the many people who tried to heal the wound accumulated great merit, even though they were ultimately unable to stop the splinter from hitting the Buddha and the wound from leaking. Finally, the monk Kashyapa, who was known to possess great powers, uttered the words of truth, whereby the wound closed. Mm-hmm. This dedication of the truth was a condition for the Buddha's activity. The third example, where a pure field of merit is visualized, shows that one also accomplishes one's own accumulations. Finally, the Dorshema points out that by making offerings to the Guru, one's root of virtue does not come to an end, but only grows. So, dedicating to the Gurus, to the Buddhas, is praised as a very skillful way of dedicating. Now, any questions or comments about this? This formula here from the Vinaya Vastu, may the wound stop leaking through, basically stop bleeding, through the blessing of the truth. What truth? Of the sameness of son and foe in the heart of the Exalted One. So Kashyapa says, as for the Buddha, he sees no difference between his son and his enemy, Devadatta and Rahula. And the implication here is like, and if that is true, then this wound will heal. And since that is true, Buddha don't look at Devadatta and resent Devadatta and look at his son Rahula and is partial to Rahula. And because of that, then this healed. In this way, we finish chapter 4. So this dedicating is sometimes also expressed like offering, to dedicate this, to offer this, to dedicate merit, to offer merit, or sometimes more visceral, like more concrete. Sometimes it says, dedicate this food to the hungry ghost. So it's like dedicating the food and dedicating the merit of dedicating the food as well. One Kempo was just sharing with me how his teacher. And so this is an idea of how you can dedicate. He says that his teacher, at one point, he noticed that his teacher was like saying, like chanting, whenever he was in the shower. Now, I have to say, in the Chinese tradition and some other Asian traditions, there's a lot of like do's and don'ts. And one of them, famously is like, oh, when you're in the toilet, you should not say mantras. I think this is kind of based more on this idea that it's disrespectful. And so the Chinese East Asian tradition is very prim and proper, This is the influence of Confucianism, to be, always very prim and proper. So then they say, don't bring, sutras, Buddhas into the toilet. And which is also true, But on the other hand, like if you practice like in the Vajrayana way, you have to use every situation. So when this Khenpo noticed that his teacher, was like chanting things in the shower. So one day he asked his teacher, he said, Rinpoche, what are you chanting, when you're taking shower? And he said, I'm doing the Jambala water offering. It's like, what? It's like, oh yeah, So he visualized himself as Jambala, then the shower that comes, then the water that goes into, drainage. He visualizes all the hungry ghosts receiving that offering. So, and Rinpoche said, yeah, don't waste time, Don't waste time. We have to shower. Then don't just think, it's about showering. So likewise, and it says, even if when you're showering, if you don't know the Jambala water offering, even when you're showering, you just think, in your mind, you can chant, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Mani Padme Hum. Then that water that washes your body, cleanses your body, but that water also becomes elixir for the hungry ghosts. Same, when you're doing dishes, no choice, you have to do dishes. Then now you can do dishes skillfully. As you do your dishes, Om Bajrasato Samaya Manupalaya Bajrasato Tenopatita Dudo Mebava Sudokaya Mebava Subokaya Mebava Anurato Mebava. Then as you think that water that goes down the drain, in some of the Vajrasattva practice, they say you visualize, right? The nectar that comes into you goes wash everything impure out. Then all this smoky liquid that goes out of your body goes into the ground opens up. All your karmic creditors down there in the form of the Lord of Death open their mouth and drink all of this. But when they drink it, it's elixir. It's amrita, and it satisfies them. The grudges that they have against you because you have stolen from them, you have killed them, you have eaten them, you have whatever, all those are, repaid. So when you do your dishes, then that water goes down. This is a vast way. This is how vast it is. So next week we start with chapter 5, 28, I think 28 verses, chapter 5, one of the longer chapters as well. By this point, the underlying principles of Gongchik, I don't think we should be so surprised anymore. But then how do those underlying principles play out when it comes to more specifically Vajrayana issues and questions and context is addressed in chapter 5. And you'll see that in the commentary, you don't see a division into Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana. Like, oh, that is a Hinayana, and so we only quote from Hinayana. Oh, that is Mahayana. Oh, we only quote from Mahayana. No. Again, one of the underlying principles of the Drigong tradition is that these divisions are all based on the level of maturity of the trainee. Insofar as the words of the Buddha are concerned, they are all perfect within the context of who he gave them to. So those words, right, don't have levels to them. And so we don't need to be so rigid, and say, oh, that's a Hinayana idea. Oh, that's a Mahayana idea. Like I said, I saw on Facebook, somebody talking about, the Vajrayana's expression of like transforming anger. And then, of course, you all know this, yeah, I'm sure. Immediately people like to talk about that. Like, oh, yes, energy of anger can be transformed. They can be channeled so that they can, do great things. So you don't need to be so down on, anger, because actually the energy of anger, blah, blah, blah. So, then somebody asked, like, but what about this idea that, it's an afflictive emotion and it needs to be purified? And then the main person talking about this, actually a Lama, he said, oh, that's just a Hinayana hang-up. These Hinayana kind of like baggage that needs to be, you need to get over that so that you can be Vajrayana. Yeah. Yeah, maybe, it's useful in some ways to think like that. But from Gilbert Rinpoche's perspective, it's like, no, it's not a Hinayana hang-up. Yeah. If you think, it's all about abandoning, like it's something real that needs to be abandoned, then even your so-called Hinayana understanding is flawed. And if you think that anger has no faults, it's all pure, then your so-called Vajrayana understanding is also flawed. Right? Both understandings are flawed. But when you understand it, then it's only one reality of the situation. Yeah. No, like, oh, in the Hinayana it's not allowed. Oh, in the Vajrayana it is allowed. It's not like that. Of course, I'm sure all of you remember, tomorrow, Khenchen Rinpoche will give the second of 3 teachings of this month. Again, it will start at 9 o'clock, our New York time. And the text for tomorrow is already available, on the website. And so if you have registered, again, you should have gotten an email. That email was sent out this morning at around 6 New York time. If you don't see it, you have to search for it in your mail folders. Yeah? These mail readers are too clever. If it is not sent directly one person to one person, they start marking it as, oh, this is an advertisement. Oh, this is a promotion. Oh, this is a social media. Then they put it in different folders so you don't see it. But it's there. So please look for it. And all the information that you need for tomorrow, it's in that email. It's good to stay for the whole teaching. But even if you cannot stay for the whole teaching, you have to come earlier. Or you can come and have to leave earlier, or you can only come later. It's good to come for whatever portion of it that you can. The text for tomorrow is the one that says, don't make the mistake of thinking that the way to progress on the path is by enduring suffering. It's by experiencing suffering. In fact, it is not the experiencing of suffering that leads to results, but rather it's the accumulation of merit and gnosis that takes us further on the path. Superficially, suffering takes place, but it is not by enduring suffering that you become more mature. So it's a real interesting point there. So it talks about, like Milarepa, it says, don't end up with the wrong take-home lesson, because Milarepa's life, right, has so many episodes of suffering. And it says, don't make the mistake of thinking, oh, therefore, it is because of those suffering that he became great. No, not because of the suffering. The suffering was an impetus, but it's because of the two accumulations that then he went beyond suffering, that he became free from suffering. Chanchu semchu rinpoche mage banam ge gyurche ge banyam bane bayam gong ne gong du bil or sho. Okay, Tata.
Thank you.
Be
Thank
good.
you.
Be good, be good, be good. Ta-ta.
Gracias. Gracias.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias. Buenos días.
Thank you.